Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. You are taking a live look over Washington, D.C. That is the Capitol building there in the distance. Now, there has been a growing call from Democratic lawmakers and allies for President Biden to step back and step aside ahead of the November election, as we are just months away. But last night, during that NATO summit speech, we did hear from Biden, and he remained defiant, so to speak, saying that he was not going to step back at all. Do want to talk more about that and some other topics here, so let's bring in Michael LaRosa, previously serving as press secretary for First Lady Jill Biden and special assistant to the president. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to talk about what happened last night, that NATO summit speech. Give me your overall thoughts of what you were thinking as you watched that.
Yeah, I thought, the president had some verbal gaffes, I guess you could say, missteps, confusing some names, catching himself in one instance, not catching himself in the other. Those kinds of mistakes, unfortunately, will be amplified forever going forward as he continues to run. On substance, he was incredible and probably looked more and sounded like more what we should have seen in the debate. But for me, my test for him has never been about substance or policy. I worked for them, so I believe Biden can run circles around anybody on foreign or domestic policy and his record. That's not the test he needs to clear, though, with the voters and with the media and with his supporters. He needs to clear a presentation test almost, and it's still there still isn't a consensus around whether he's been able to do that. I think, I should say, I think there's a consensus that he hasn't. There isn't a consensus of what happens going forward.
And you did kind of touch on his debate performance there, so I want to get your overall thoughts on that as well. That is almost what some will say actually sparked the Democratic lawmakers and allies that have come forward to ask Biden to kind of back off. That is where that almost seemed to start. So what were your thoughts watching that debate performance?
My thoughts were, and I said this actually a couple hours before, somebody had asked me if I thought we were going to know more after this. And my hunch was that we would not know more for some time. And I think that's exactly where we are. My thoughts were that this was not going to not stop all of the members of the Democratic caucus who want the president to step aside from coming forward. It might give several pause for some time. And I think that's what we saw. We saw the president buy more time.
Do you think that his polling changed? Did that debate have any sort of impact on his polling? Because you can look at one poll and it's going to say one thing. You look at another, it says something completely different. So have we seen things kind of change overall? And do you think that the debate had any sort of effect on that?
Well, from what we've seen, yes and no, right? There are polls that have them statistically tied, or there's one poll today that has Biden moving ahead of President Trump, barely, but within the margin of error. I tend to believe two things. One, that the race was pretty stabilized going into the debate, and it seems to be stable coming out of the debate, meaning I think most people have their minds made up about these two men. I think a lot of the cake about them is already baked in the minds of most voters. I think that's more along the lines of what you're seeing in the polls. But I would also say we had to have that debate early because there's a lot of voter apathy, especially around, our candidate. And the point of the debate was to reinvigorate our base. And the debate had just the opposite effect, unfortunately. So in my view, we were losing going into the debate. And even when we're tied head to head, we're still probably losing, unfortunately. He really needs to break away from Trump as we did in 2020 and show some real distance from him. And we're not seeing that in either the head-to-heads or the state-by-states, which frankly are more important.
And it's been a couple years since you've worked super closely with the Bidens, but during your time, did you notice any kind of decline in the president's health, mental state, abilities, any of that?
No, and I've actually been pretty consistent and clear since I left the White House. One, that he should run for reelection, and two, that just wasn't my experience with him. He was. I know people keep saying the same, using the same adjectives, but there's no other way to say he was just a sharp guy. And there was not one thing that ever gave me pause when I was at the White House and we were prepping for joint interviews, or if I was, happened to be in one of their homes or at Camp David and just around him casually. Not once did I ever have pause from this man that he couldn't do the job. And he ended up doing, from a Democrat's point of view, he ended up doing a remarkable job in his first 2 and 3 years. And so that's where I think there's some real conflict in the minds of Democrats, because he has done such a good job. He earned his right to reelection. Most incumbents run for reelection. It's really hard to replace the leader of your party. But at the same time, there's a lot of concern about his age, and that debate was shocking and jarring for a lot of us, including me.
What sort of impact and pull overall does Dr. Jill Biden have over her husband's career? Because I'm sure you've heard over the past several weeks, you've had so many people who have come out and said she's the reason that he's staying in the race and won't exit the race. You obviously have insight there because you know them. So what sort of political pull does she have?
If we had more time, I would probably, there's a lot to sort of unpack, but the truth is she's not his political advisor. They've been married for about 48 years, 47 years, I think. And they're both two ambitious, independent people. She had her own career throughout the entire time they've been married. And she kept that career, her day job, when she was second lady and first lady. And he never got in her way. And he didn't get in her way when she wanted to seek 3 advanced degrees over the course of their marriage while she was raising a family. They had help. She didn't do it by herself, but he didn't stand in the way of her aspirations. And you know what? She never stood in the way of his. And they've been through 15 campaigns together, including their sons. And her job is as his supporter. Now, what she say matters to him? Absolutely, probably more than anyone. But she wouldn't want to take on the burden, and she won't take on the burden of being sort of the savior of Democrats or the party elder here. That's not how she sees her role. She's his spouse. And so she wants to do what's best for him, but she also won't tell him he shouldn't do something he wants to do. And this is his decision, not hers.
I know you don't have a crystal ball or anything of that nature, but I do want to ask, do you believe, just based on what you've seen, what you know, that President Biden will stay in the race, or do you think that he will bow out?
I believe, based on what I've seen and heard, that he will stay in the race. I do.
And do you think that he can beat Trump in November?
Right now, it doesn't look like that's the case, but I think where things stand in July are certainly not where things stand in October. Early voting does begin rather early. It starts in some places in mid-September. It starts very soon, and there's not a lot of time to change perception and to start moving away in the polls. That said, we have to go back to 2016. Access Hollywood, just 2 weeks before the election, everybody thought it was over. Republicans were actually in the position that we are in now, trying to scramble and figure out whether they should dump their nominee. And they didn't. And like them, for the most part, Democrats are pretty united around President Biden so far. That doesn't mean it won't change. But it also doesn't mean he can't win. Are we behind? Absolutely, we're behind right now. So there's a lot of work to do. But where we are, I mean, if where we are now was predictive. Hillary Clinton and Michael Dukakis and Al Gore, frankly, would have been president.
Well, and we were talking about polling, and you have one poll over here that says one thing, you have another poll that says another thing, and an expert who was just on a short time ago actually said the polling really doesn't matter, just ask President Hillary Clinton, because we know that that's what the polls did show. So, that's something that people have said in the past there. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Is there anything else that you want to add before I let you go?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, but I'm happy to come back anytime you're interested in talking politics and need a Democrat's point of view who served with the Bidens.
All right. Looks like you're coming back every day. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Sure. Happy to anytime.